and jump into our speaker introduction. So first, I'm so excited to introduce you all to Joy M. Hutton. Joy is the founder of Joy of Consulting, a management consulting firm, and On the Go Glam, a beauty on-demand marketplace, which I really need. Joy is an advocate of entrepreneurs and small businesses and serves on a number of small business councils and has a strong commitment to working with organizations that develop female entrepreneurs. Joy was honored by the City of Houston for her leadership in entrepreneurship. February 4th, 2020 was named Joy M. Hutton Day. In honor of this day, she launched the Lead Her Ship Fund, a micro grant fund for female entrepreneurs. She was named to Inc. magazine's 2022 Female Founders 100 list. She was recently appointed by the Harris County Judge to serve on the Harris County Women's Commission to support health and economic initiatives of women in the community. Hi, Joy.
Hello, hello. So excited to be here as always. And thank you, Takesha. I see you in the chat.
Wonderful. And next we have Debbie Kritzman. Debbie is the Senior Vice President of Talent Acquisition, People Operation, and Analytics at Global Atlantic Financial Group. Debbie has over 20 years of experience leading talent initiatives and building organizations, leveraging best-in-class hiring practices and technology. Debbie is passionate about candidate experience and client centricity. So great to have you here, Debbie.
Thank you so much for having me. So proud to be part of this. And Joy, I agree, you're fire. That's awesome.
Thank you.
Wonderful. Okay, so we've got the topic, we've got the perfect panelists to take us through. So let's go ahead and jump into it. If you have questions throughout this conversation, please drop them in the chat because you'll get a chance for a live Q&A at the end. All right, so Joy, I want to kick it off with you. Could you explain why the first hire is such a critical decision for solopreneurs?
Absolutely. So one of the things that a lot of people may have heard is hire slow and fire fast. And this is crucial to hiring people because a lot of the times we hire people for the wrong reasons just because we need butts and seats. We need somebody to do the job, and then we don't want to fire them because either we don't want to be the bad guy or our emotions are attached. We don't want to be confrontational. And so it's really important to make the best decision when you hire someone, especially that first person you hire, because this determines the trajectory of your business. It helps you alleviate your workload. You want to bring on new skills and perspectives and lay the foundation for future growth. So your foundation is super important. So you really want to make the best decision when you hire that first person. And one of the other things I want to mention too is a lot of the times people don't even know who that first person should be. They just know they need help, but they haven't identified what they even need help with. So one of the things that I like to tell people is do this really quick exercise. It's called the 3Ds, which is do, dump, and delegate. And so what this is basically making a to-do list of all the things that you do from A to Z in your business, whether that's admin, checking emails, sending invoices, how you make your products, if you have a product-based business. So you write all your list of to-dos, and I know this is a lot, but this list will grow over time and it may decrease, but you have this to-do list. So that's your do. Then you look at that list and you decide, what do I not want to do on this list and what do I not have the capacity to do? And that's going to be your dump list. So you cross those things out. That's going to be your dump list. And those are the things that you will then take to your delegate list. And so these are things, when you look at this dump list, you're like, I may need an operations person. I may need a marketing person. I may need a social media person, but you can look at these roles and that's how you shape your roles and responsibilities of your future new hire. So do, dump, and delegate, because you got to figure out what you actually need help with.
I love that, Joy. Just spending the time to figure out who you're bringing in and making sure they have something to do, because, what are you going to give them to do and what do you need support with? Such excellent advice. Debbie, I'd love to kick it to you now. What are some initial HR considerations that entrepreneurs who are hiring should keep in mind?
Yeah, I think that it's a great follow-up to what Joy was just saying, because before you can decide, how you want to hire, you need to figure out what you're going to hire them for. So once you figure out what that delegation is, I think it's really exciting. So it's an exciting time, but also like a lot to consider, because you want to think about the type of relationship you want to have with this hire. Do you want them to be a full-time person? Do you want them to be part-time? Do you want them to work for you directly or through a third-party contracting company? In each of those relationships will have different legal responsibilities to the employee or contractor. So you really need to define that. I think coming prepared with a job description is really important. So taking that delegation list and being able to document that with clear descriptions of what you're looking for without too many requirements and qualifications. And so when you think about this group and women and empowering women, women oftentimes don't apply for things unless they feel like they can fill every single one of those boxes. And they're more apt to apply to something that's more inclusive, that has less qualifications. So I think being mindful of being clear in the responsibilities that you want to delegate to them, but then also not making the qualifications seem so unsurmountable where somebody doesn't want to apply. I think you're really looking to have a good understanding of what you're hiring for, and then how do you want to screen those candidates, right? So you can know what you want to do, but if you don't really think through how to screen them, then you're not going to be able to have a consistent process. And having a consistent process really makes sure that you're being as inclusive as possible, making sure that every candidate is asked the same questions, and so that when you're identifying who you want to hire, you have a good comparison. So a lot of times it's not somebody's previous experience, right? It's a combination of the things they've done in the past that could be transferable, and do they have the right culture and ability to learn and grow on the same trajectory that your business will learn and grow. So it's a super exciting time, but it's really important to have those set, and you could leverage tools like ChatGPT to help you with those. So if you look at AI and technology and you write in, the kind of role that you're looking for, you could just literally dump in your delegate list, and then it will come up with a job description for you. And then you can ask, what kind of questions should I be asking candidates to fill these qualifications? And ChatGPT will really do that all for you. So I think that's important, to leverage technology that is free and will help you be able to get to that point faster. And then of course you could always take whatever that spits out at you and make it your own, but it just allows things to happen so much quicker. It's really important to have an idea of what kind of compensation and benefit package that will meet the industry standards for what you're looking for. And again, you can use online tools to help figure that out, to understand what do people pay. I look for positions at my company, which is a 1,600 person company. If we'll go to market examples of compensation, but I'll also look at other positions that companies are hiring for that are looking for the same qualifications, and see what kind of benefits and what kind of package is being offered at those other companies. A lot of states right now are requiring to post minimum salaries and maximum salaries, so you can see a range. So that gives you some perspective as well. I think there's tax and legal considerations that you'll have to think about depending on what kind of employee that you want to hire. And so later on, I'll talk about this a bit more, but having a budget for outside counsel, I think, is important, because you're going to be able to research some things on your own, but you really want to make sure that you have someone to call in case you need them. And then you're going to need to be able to post your position somewhere. And so LinkedIn is a great way to do that, and leveraging your network and your connections to help them and have them post the job, so that can share your role with people in the community. And so I was just looking at some of the awesome things you are all building, but in organizing business, many people in the community might know other people that would need someone to organize. So leveraging your network and your connections to get those referrals, to attract them to the job posting, is a great idea. So something really simple that I do, even though I work for an established company, is I'm on Facebook groups. I have 2 daughters that are heading to college in the fall. So I'm on Facebook groups like Paying for College, and my company is offering a scholarship now for sophomores that are looking to focus on finance and insurance. And I posted my company's posting in that Pay for College board, right? Because even though we post it at other places, we have a press release and we're a bigger company, I still want to use my connections to help me gather interest. And then also, you want to make sure when you're asking questions that they're relevant to the job and they're not unlawful. So you don't want to get yourself trapped into like finding out about people's personal situations, about the kids that they have, about their, whether or not they have a car. There's really specific questions that you should leverage resources for that you can and can't ask. So for example, you can ask, like, do you have reliable transportation? But you really can't ask like what that is, right? So somebody that can get to the job on a daily basis, you don't need to know how, you just need to know that they can. You'll need an employment letter to be signed. You probably can find one online, but it might be helpful to have an outside counsel review it and make sure it makes sense for the kind of candidate that you're looking to hire. And then, of course, after you hire somebody, if they're working for you directly, you'll need to have forms like a W-4, an I-9. They'll need to bring identification, and you'll want to make sure you have policies and systems and folders to track all that information in. So you want to make sure it's organized in case you're ever audited. And then the last thing I'll say is onboarding is so important. So studies will tell you that even people who leave companies years after they start will cite their onboarding experience as a reason why they were happy or unhappy in their role. So how you transition somebody to be successful at your firm, or even if it's one person, and how good they feel about the time and attention that you're providing to them as they're onboarding, it lasts for years. And so that's really important.
That's amazing, Debbie. Thank you so much. There were so many great gems, as mentioned in the chat, from the free resources you can use, which is great because then you can use some of that income to focus on counsel. Like you were saying, it's a nice balance. And then really just thinking through the whole hiring process from where you're going to post all the way down to the onboarding. That's really comprehensive. Thank you. Okay, so my next question is for Joy. What key qualities should entrepreneurs look for in their first employees to ensure that they have this operational success?
Absolutely. So I'm so glad that Debbie tied in the 3Ds to what she was talking about. And also I agree with the onboarding as well, because a lot of companies will throw you into the fire with no training and nothing. And so that is not the way to properly onboard someone. You want to have training, you want to have that employee handbook. There are templates out there for that, and leveraging technology, like Debbie said, Chat GPT. So as far as the quality, so I always say, it's nice to want to surround yourself with people who are like you, but that's not necessarily the best practice in your business. You want to have people that sometimes are smarter than you. It's okay. You want to have people that can make up for your strengths and your weaknesses. And people you hire should be adaptable. They should take initiative. They should have strong work ethic. And, I have a good BS radar in interviews. So I can usually tell whether someone wants a job, just for the check, or if they really are passionate about the work we do. And so values is something that I look for in hiring. And, because once you get to the interview, you've already identified if someone has the skills, but what are their values like? Will they be a good culture fit for your organization? Will they be aligned with your company's values? Will they be a team player? Because they may work with you, but will they work with your other team members? And are they coachable? A lot of times people come into a role and they are know-it-alls, but if they are not coachable and not willing to learn, that's going to be problematic. And then are they flexible? Are they proactive? Some people are not adaptable to change. And so you don't want to hire people who are going to have that type of attitude, or attitude in general. Leave your personal problems at home. And one of the things that I also like to focus on in their interview is, what do people really want to do? Because I don't go in with the mindset that someone's going to be in my company for 25 years. Gone are the days of people working for 25 years at companies. So I'm realistic about that. But what is it that they really enjoy doing, and how can we foster an environment of personal and professional growth? How can we help that person grow? So I like to have those conversations in an interview process, because I'm like, okay, I realize that maybe you're doing this job because you need to make ends meet, but what is it that you really enjoy doing? What about this job attracts you? So I think having that kind of personal approach in an interview process is good, so you can really get down to who you're really hiring. But yes, coachable is a big thing, because like I said, there are a lot of know-it-alls out there, and you don't want that type of person on your team.
Oh, I love that. I know, I'm like, how can you share your BS radar with us? 'Cause I'm the kind of person who's like, oh yeah, I'd love to kick it with them.
Yes.
That's different when you're hiring.
Yeah. I really don't think it takes 5 interviews to decide if someone is a good fit. There are a lot of companies out here taking people through the ringer, and maybe if it's for a C-suite position, yes, but for some of these entry level manager, director level positions, I don't think it takes all that. If you have the skills, yes. Now let's talk about who you are as a person and how you're going to fit into my organization. But I think it just comes with years from being in HR and just being able to read people, where I'm just like, this is not gonna work. This is not gonna work. I don't believe in hour-long interviews. I can spot it within the first 2 minutes. So yeah.
Here first, call Joy, she's got you. I love that. So many great tips in there. And really, I think it feeds into just the whole experience. Even Debbie, what you were talking about, from the interview to the onboarding, really focusing on that person and making them feel welcome at the jump. So Debbie, my next question is for you, because we've talked about all these amazing skills, but how should these qualities be communicated effectively in a job description?
So as we said earlier, we don't want to have too many qualifications that sort of like prevents somebody from wanting to hire you. But sharing your story in the job description, I think, is really important. Like, to Joy's point, you don't have to have a million interviews or really long conversations, but it's a time for the job description, and the interview is a time for the candidate to learn about you and to assess if you're the right fit, just as much as it is a chance for you to assess the candidate. So it's always a mutual conversation. And so the job description and any information you have out there on social media or your website is the first time a candidate is going to learn about you and what you're presenting, and how you want people to like absorb you and what you're trying to build. And so putting a little bit of that and like about you or your company or the excitement that you're looking to bring is really important. And so as a candidate, you want them to read and be like, oh my God, I want to be part of that. And so it's not just about the responsibilities or the qualifications, it's also about the essence. And so for some of you who are just starting out, you might not have a website, you might not have a big social media presence. So trying to capture that in a job description, I think, is really important. I think highlighting the benefits and opportunities are important. So like, as you grow, is there going to be opportunity for that person to grow? To Joy's point, we're not looking for someone to stay with us for 25 years anymore, but after like 2 years of experience with you, what could they go do next? And being okay with that, right? It might be next with you, and it might be taking those skills somewhere else. So what will they leave this job with, like, that they could add to their own resume? Especially, our younger generations are really looking at like, what's in it for me? And so you have to find that nice mix, because you want somebody who's willing to come and make your company better, move you forward, help you build your business, but you also want to make sure they understand like why it'd be a good thing for them to do. And I think including a call to action and providing instructions on how they can submit their resume and what next steps are, because you're like starting off at a smaller business, you might want to even leave your email address if there's questions, so that you can interact with people. And I guess lastly, don't try to stay away from acronyms, because people might not understand what those are in a job description. So just make sure you're spelling everything out and explaining things so that anybody can understand what you're trying to share.
Oh, heavy on the acronyms. I've seen so many positions where I'm like, what does this mean? And they can even be different across industries. So that's so helpful. And I love that concept of sharing your story, especially when you're looking to bring on that first person, because we're really hearing how monumental that is. So really having someone who can connect.
I think so. And to Joy's point, like, you want somebody who's going to be honest and trustworthy. You're letting them into something that's so special and personal to you. And so, putting that out there and making sure that the questions you're asking in the interview are helping you understand that BS meter, or helping you understand, is this person really going to be there with you and help you grow this business, and what that opportunity would be for them. I think it's, joining an entrepreneurial solo practitioner business is a great opportunity for somebody that might not be able to start at a larger company, because you might be more open to someone that doesn't have every skill if they're willing to work really hard. So figuring out how to assess that is important.
Yeah, I love that. That's amazing. And I'm just gonna take a little pause here to encourage everyone, as you're hearing all this great information, two things. The recording will be available tomorrow directly to your inbox, and please drop your questions in the chat, because we're gonna have a little live Q&A and we'll try to get to as many questions as we can. Okay, so we've talked about job descriptions, and Debbie, you kind of alluded to this earlier, but can you outline basic employment laws that solopreneurs need to be aware of, or how can they just avoid, the legal pitfalls of hiring?
Yeah. So one thing off the bat is, like, depending on the location of your business, the type of business that you have, there's going to be many different federal, state, local laws that regulate various aspects of your business. So there's not like a one size fits all. What I think is really important is that you do have somebody, an outside counsel that you budget for, and that you're always looking at available resources online to make sure that you're not doing anything outside of what is acceptable, right? And again, even though I work at a much larger company, there's still things that happen on a daily basis that I sort of, partner with counsel on to make sure I'm handling this the right way. And I've done this for over 20 years, so I understand, what feels right and wrong and what has been right and wrong in the past, but states are changing their laws all the time. So I'll give you an example. Connecticut just passed a ban the box law in January of 2023, which requires that companies hire people that have felonies against them, convictions against them that don't have anything to do with the job that they're applying for. So we cannot rescind an offer for somebody that fails a background, or that background check comes back with a conviction if it has nothing to do with the day-to-day responsibilities of their role. Before 2023, that wasn't the case. So you have to sort of stay on top of that. Also, you may have candidates that apply that are not eligible to work in the United States for any employer now or in the future. And so it is totally acceptable to have that on your job description. So you want to make sure you're using the proper language for that, but you can simply state that you're not accepting candidates that don't have that are not eligible to work in the United States now or in the future. And then that means that you cannot interview anybody that has that requires that. Opposite is true. If you don't have that on your job description, you do need to consider that. So you have to just really make sure what you're capable or not capable of. And as a solo entrepreneur, I believe that, you probably don't have the capability to be able to sponsor someone's visa. So you just want to make sure you understand that. You want to create really fair and consistent hiring practices. And so we talked about that earlier. Like, the more you can be consistent on the kinds of questions you're asking when you're interviewing candidates, the better experience that everyone's going to have and the more consistent it's going to be. You also should avoid making questions or decisions based on projected characteristics like race, gender, disability, anything that's protected, a protected status. And everyone should be conducting background checks and reference checks. Drug tests only if they're relevant to the job they're doing. So for instance, if they're not like driving a company vehicle, or not, like handling manufacturing or something like that, you probably don't need to have a drug test. You just really want to make sure that if you have one, it's relevant to the role. We talked a little bit about this, and then Joy did some more, but proper training is really important. And it does really make a difference in ensuring that they understand the rules of the workplace. So you may have a variety of kinds of roles that you're looking to fill. And if they are working with machinery or equipment or chemicals, you really want to make sure they understand the rules, and that you understand your obligation and the kinds of insurances that you need to carry in case someone gets hurt on the job. And then again, it's just reinforcing that, having that budget for outside counsel if you need it.
Yes, it's that was really interesting about the box rule that came into play last year. And I think that's a great example of how you really need to look into those things individually, where your business is placed and where you're located, and having that counsel who can kind of specialize in that makes so much sense. Okay, so our next question is for Joy. Could you share some practical tips on conducting interviews that help you identify the right candidate for small growing teams?
Absolutely. And Debbie touched on a few of them, like the reference checks. I definitely encourage doing reference checks because you want to know what type of person you're dealing with. Some people are like masters at interviewing and they sound good, they look good, but you really want to have someone vouch for them. So I'm all for reference checks. And then one of the things I want to point out too, like, yes, you are spending time on interviewing these candidates, but they are interviewing with you as well. So understand that people's time is valuable. So make sure that you're also making this interview worthwhile for them. So, I mean, in the past, when I was in the job market, working in corporate America, like so many interviewers or companies wasted my time, taking me through all of these processes and what have you, doing assignments. And this may be unpopular opinion, but I do not feel like you should require written assignments if you're not compensating that person. So it doesn't have to be a lot, but I believe in compensating someone for their time, because if they've done all that work, one, you're getting their expertise on a particular subject, so you can use that to your advantage. Two, you're asking them to complete something for you, and that is their time. And three, if they're not getting hired, that's time lost. And you can say, oh, well, they're applying for this job, but I really don't think it's fair to the applicant. So something small, it could be $50 if you could just complete this assignment, especially if you're requiring them to do all of these assessments and what have you, exercises for this job. So again, people's time is valuable. The other thing is, in an interview, you should ask situational or behavioral questions, because you want to understand, how will this person respond in a particular scenario? How do they respond to situations when they are under stress? How do they respond when they have a conflict with you or any other employee? Because you want to know what their conflict resolution skills are like. Ask questions that will get to how they communicate in general. What is the best way for them to communicate? And I think also understanding the personality type that you're dealing with in the interview process, if someone is an introvert or extrovert, because everyone does not operate the same way. So what is the best way for them to communicate? Is it email? Is it by phone? Is it video? Is it in person? So understanding that the person on the other side of that screen or other side of the table is a human. So I like to lead with human-centric questions, human-centric values, because again, yes, you need someone to fill a job, but they are humans at the end of the day. Also, look at their nonverbal cues. You can tell someone's checked out when you're talking to them and they have no interest in what you're saying and they're just winging it. Look at those nonverbal cues. Are they rolling their eyes? Are they slumped over? Are they, like, you can read people's body language to see if they're interested or not, if they're enthusiastic about this job, which is why I always like doing either in person or Zoom so I can see people's body language. And then, do they know about your company? Have they asked you any questions? Have they asked you about the role? Because if people are not expressing any type of interest, then why would you want them at your company? Because like Debbie said, or like Brittany said, this is something you've built, especially as a small business. You're bringing something into your operation that you've built from the ground up. You want to make sure someone's excited about the work that you do. And then I know we're talking about first hire, but if you've already hired someone else, think about involving other team members in the interview process as well. Because again, they have to work with the team. And I know I talked about culture fit earlier. You've already assessed skills by looking at their resume, but you can ask more technical questions about the role as well. Do they have any problem solving skills? Because that's definitely important. Again, going back to that conflict resolution. And again, are they aligned with your company's values and goals?
I love that. I love oh, go ahead, Debbie.
Oh, I was just going to say, when we think about situational questions, like Joy brought up, really asking for situations they've been in the past. So to the point of problem solving skills, like, can you give me an example of a time where you needed to solve a problem? Tell me what that was and how you resolved it and what you learned from it that you'd use again, the next time you come up with you have a similar problem you're facing, because studies will show that the way you handle things in the past is a good indicator of how you handle it in the future or what you learned from the past. So, when you're asking questions, just asking them to give you example, like how would you handle this, is like a for instance versus like how I actually handled it.
That's such a good point and gives us really clear ideas on how to ask those questions, because it sounds like that's a really important piece of this. And I really like the part, Joy, that you mentioned of reading their body language and taking it in and really just seeing everything and seeing if they're interested in your business as well. Okay, I'm seeing some great questions coming through the chat and I'm taking note of them, so keep them coming. All right, so my next question, I want to start with Debbie and then I'm going to kick it to Joy. So Debbie, how can solopreneurs create a work environment that not only attracts but also retains talent, especially when they're just starting to build their team?
Okay, this is great. So I think, first of all, recognizing that this is really hard, right? Attracting and retaining talent is what every company, no matter how small or big you are, struggles with all the time. And so we have whole departments that focus on that, right, at big companies. So really thinking about this and coming up with your own strategy and what's true to yourself is important. And don't be afraid to ask the hard questions. And so, I'm always wondering why managers and leaders don't have those tough conversations with their employees, asking them like, really, how are things going? What is it that you're looking for in your career? How can I support you in that? Is this going well for you? What are you looking to do? If you ask those questions, you're going to be better able to help them understand if that's going to be something that you could offer or not. So again, to Joy's point earlier, we're not looking always for someone to stick with us for 25 years, but we want them to want to be with us and to understand what those opportunities are. So a nugget that I really like a saying, kind of like your 3Ds, is clear is kind. So the more clear we can be with an employee about how they're doing in their job, what they're doing well, and what they need to improve on, it's the kindest way that we can be. So this goes back to the very first thing I think we started talking about, providing feedback to candidates or to employees. And if you're not giving them the feedback and the ability to understand how they could be successful and what they need to work on, that's not kind. So lots of times I think we're afraid to have those tough conversations, and then we sort of just like eliminate a role or just say like, hey, this isn't working out. And we never gave them a chance to be successful. So the more honest you can be and the more you can give them opportunities to be successful, the kinder you are. And the sooner you do it, the better it is. So providing opportunities to learn and grow is really important, and emphasizing the mission and vision of your business is really important. And the more they can feel a part of that mission and vision, the more they're going to be happy and excited to continue to work. So I think those are like the most important things when I think about retaining talent. Also recognizing and rewarding performance, and it could be something really simple. To Joy's point, during the interview process, you could pay someone that's investing time in you or with you. Same as like, if you have an employee that's put in, extra and gone above and beyond, like getting them a gift card to DoorDash or, sending them flowers. What I often do for my team is I'll send cookies home for their kids, and I'll say something on the card, like to the kids, like, your dad or mom is amazing. Thank you for lending them to us. And I think that like the more you can incorporate a family into what you're doing, you're spending a lot of time at your job every day. And if you have, if your family at home or your friends at home are reinforced and feel like part of that, you're going to have an easier time with their continued, long-term happiness. So I think those are things that I would say could help retain.
That's amazing. I love the cookie idea. That is really cool. I like that. Enjoy.
Everyone's heart is chocolate for their kids.
I was gonna say, yeah. I'm like, well, who doesn't love cookies? Yeah, and then buying the way to the kids' hearts, nothing wrong with that. Joy, same question for you, when it comes to attracting but also retaining talent.
Yeah, absolutely. So I think on the other side of incentives, I think making sure you are fostering open communication with your team, providing regular feedback, and creating an environment that's supportive and inclusive. And so I think a lot of the times, again, we hire people and we get kind of in the weeds, they're doing their jobs, but set a cadence for how you're going to meet with your team. I'm a proponent of weekly check-ins. And so as your organization grows, as your company grows, you won't be the person that does these weekly check-ins who have a manager. But I think having just a 15-minute check-in with your staff once a week, so that one, you can check in with them to see if there are any concerns about the job they're doing, where are they on existing tasks, and do they have any feedback. I love getting feedback from my employees because I am one brain. I do better when there are multiple brains. And so I can't do everything by myself. So I'm always open to receiving feedback from my employees. The organization or the company cannot exist without the people. So understanding how important the people are to your company and treating them as such, making sure they know that they're valued. So like Debbie was saying, any incentives, any performance rewards, thinking of how you can reward your people for good behavior, and making sure you're disciplining the bad and documenting that. But the other thing is doing company events, even if it's just you and another employee, that is a company event, take that person to dinner or whatever it is. But once you start growing your company, having team meetings so that no one feels left out. But think about, what is it that you want to feel from a workplace? Like when you were an employee, what are some things that made you feel valued, and implementing those same things? Think about, how can I create the workplace that people will love? People do not leave companies, they leave managers, or they leave the from the top. So think about, what am I doing to improve myself as a good leader? Because sure, you can hire people, but are you also setting these people up for success? And even with that, what are you doing again for personal and professional development? Because some people, they want to learn on the job skills. They want to grow within your company. You may have a person that will stay with you for 25 years if you're continuing to develop them and invest in them. So think about that as well.
Love that. That's such a good point to think about how you would like and things you would like when you're in a company. Okay, and this last question that we have before we jump into the Q&A segment, it's one of my favorite questions because it kind of wraps up this whole conversation and gives you kind of a direction. So, Joy, I'd love to start with you and then kick it to Debbie. So, Joy, could you provide one final piece of advice or a resource that you think that would be valuable to our audience as they prepare to make this hiring decision?
Oh, I don't have one. Can I give a few?
Okay, you can have a few.
Okay, so one thing I want you guys to, even if it is you, just as a solo entrepreneur, I want you to think of yourself as a we, not a me. Because when you are thinking in the me mentality and just I am doing this, you're limiting yourself. When you talk in we, then people don't think it's just you, and they're not. That is also how you set boundaries with people too. When they know it's not just a me, they think it's a we. So see yourself as a we, because this puts you in the mindset of expansion. You're not limiting yourself to growing as a business. And then one of the things Debbie was talking about in knowing your labor laws, really know the difference between independent contractors and employees in your state. California, if you're in California, I feel sorry for you. California is brutal on labor laws. And you really need to know that, because there is a difference. When you do not own people's time, that is an independent contractor. An employee, you own their time. You can tell them when to come to work. You cannot tell an independent contractor when to come to work. And there are other things that are up for consideration as well in terms of differentiating those two. But know your state laws on that. And I know Brittany dropped a link for the Department of Labor. And then also, there was one other thing. When you do not have a budget to hire people, consider interns. There are university and colleges that are looking for interns. Post an internship on job posts. Also know your state laws with regards to internships too, because kind of gone are the days where you don't pay interns. Some states require you to pay your interns. So definitely know what your laws, what your state laws are as pertains to that. But and then a book I would recommend reading, it's called Who? The Method for Hiring by Jeff Smart, Geoff Smart, and Randy Street. And it just has some practical strategies and tools for hiring top talent. So I definitely recommend that. And then hiring for values, because skills can be taught, but you usually get to the skills once you look at someone's resume. But really, hiring for attitude, culture fit, values. And that is what I leave you with.
That's amazing. Joy, what was the name of that book again? I'm going to drop it in the chat.
It is called Who? The A Method for Hiring
Thank you.
by Jeff Smart and Randy Street. It is Geoff for Jeff.
Got it. Thank you so much. Okay, I'm dropping that in the chat for everyone so they can take a look. Okay, Debbie, same question for you. Our final piece of advice or pieces of advice for folks who are about to take this big jump and hire.
Sure. So from a reference check perspective, think like people generally give you names of people that are going to say nice things. So if you could get a backdoor reference, it's going to provide you a lot more value. So if you know people that know the person versus just calling the people that they tell you, you're probably going to get a better kind of look at the person, but be super careful. You never want to call somebody that they're working with currently that could at all risk their current employment. So I think that's an important thing to consider. Another piece of advice is people love flexibility. It's the number one most important thing that most of us crave these days. And so when you're thinking about offering flexibility and autonomy in what you're doing, and you think about those 3Ds, like what you could delegate and how that delegation occurs, can they do it from home? Like, does it matter the time of day? And being upfront on that in your job description and when you're talking to them, and then when you're having their one-on-ones with them, because the biggest issue that people have with their employees is not being clear and concise about what you expect. And if those expectations are set up front and you're, not only verbally talking about them, but you're documenting them, people could then have more autonomy and flexibility, and you'll get a lot out of people, I think, that when you give them that flexibility. So if you don't need to have them in an office and they could work at night, and they can do, like, I always tell my team, I don't care if you're getting a pedicure as long as you're getting your job done, right? Like, I think it's important that we all understand that it's no longer like work-life balance. It's like everything is interwoven, and figuring out how that works for you and for your employee is important.
Yes, I really like that piece of flexibility and autonomy. It just kind of feeds into this whole, like, the culture you're creating as you hire your first employee and what you're looking for. Okay, so I see we have some really great questions that are filtering in, and I want to get to as many as possible. So Joy, this first question's for you. It kind of wraps up a couple of different questions. It's basically asking, is there a platform or something that I can use to make this easier when it comes to, paying and onboarding or anything like that?
Yes. And before I mention the platform, I definitely recommend people have an accountant, a bookkeeper to keep those finances in order. But as far as the platform, I like using Gusto, Gusto. It's basically like a one-stop shop for HR and payroll, because a lot of people don't have the money to hire an HR person. So this is a good third party that you can use to manage that. And so if there's compliance issues or whatever, they run your payroll reports, you pay your payroll taxes and everything. And I think I saw a question about someone, when you start paying payroll, do you have to prepay? It comes out of your, so say you want to run your direct deposits or your weekly payroll every week, it comes out at the time that you pay. So you don't have to prepay it, but you do have to make sure the money is in the account. And then they also take out payroll taxes as well and file your payroll reports. But Gusta also has templates for onboarding documents and things like that. So it really is a one-stop shop. I love it. I love using Gusto. Sorry about the train in the background. But yeah, so that's a resource that I would recommend. And it kind of eliminates you hiring an HR person, and they're very user friendly.
So I just put a little Google link in the chat, and all I did was type in like compare to Gusto. And so what you'll easily be able to find are like, what are other companies that people might want to leverage instead, what a PEO is. So you can use a PEO to help, manage all your benefits for you, your payroll, and all of that. So I think when you're thinking about how much money that you want to spend on the onboarding, the payroll, what you want to outsource, what do you want to do yourself? Do you want to hire an HR person? Obviously,
Okay.
the smaller you are, the less you want to invest in that. So do I think it's a good idea to have like an HR onboarding system for one employee? Probably not, right? So you just have to figure out what works for you.
Mhm. Yeah, and I would say, to Debbie's point too, just do your research and find the best system that works for you as well.
Yes, I totally agree. That's great. So you should be able to find both of those links in the chat right now. Debbie, you said PEO. Would you mind telling us what that stands for? You're on mute.
I'm trying to see like what the acronym means. So I know I used to work for ADP, which is a payroll company, and they were a PEO, and I don't know the acronym. So Joy, if you want to look it up as I'm talking, that'd be awesome. But what it does is it sort of allows a company like ADP to take care of all of the benefits for you, all of your payroll for you. And they actually, like, you employ the person, but you're outsourcing all of the rest of that work to the PEO. So Paychex does it. It's, it provides.
Professional employer organization.
Awesome. Thank you. Thank you. I know sometimes, we were just talking about acronyms. They start to mean their own words themselves. So it kind of, but just in case anyone was wondering. Okay, this next question, I'm going to kick it to Debbie, and then Joy, if you have any thoughts. We've talked a lot about having kind of counsel, someone you can go to when it's time to make these decisions. And there have been a couple of questions about, where do I even start to find someone who might be good for this? So any suggestions you have on finding reliable counsel? Debbie, I'll start with you.
Yeah, I mean, I unfortunately don't have a ton of experience. When I need help in my local area to find anything, I'm always putting it on like Facebook and like my local, like, community. So if I'm looking for a therapist for my kid, or a nanny, or a housekeeper, I think you could do the same thing. You could just like leverage your local community to ask people, and that the right way to ask for it is like employment counsel. That's the role, that's the title. And just find out if in your local community, if anybody has anybody that is, works with small businesses that handle employment counsel.
Yeah, and I'll add something as well. I would say definitely employment law attorneys, and also you can Google small business attorneys as well. And then there are sites like Biz Counsel, where if you need contracts, you can be connected to an attorney. Or if you have any other legal questions, you can be connected to an attorney on those sites too. It's kind of like 1-800-accountant, where you can be connected to an accountant for people who can't afford to have someone on retainer. every month, but you just need access to an attorney to speak to at a fractional cost. So bizcounsel.com.
Great, thank you. And I think both of those are excellent pieces of advice, because whenever I'm looking for anything locally, I also go to reviews, Google, I ask other folks in my network. So also utilizing your networking groups, if you're a part of any, maybe they might have some great suggestions. And then Biz Counsel, I'll drop that in the chat as well. So there's a question here that is asking about, are contractors a good way to start hiring? Or are there particular pitfalls to watch out for with contractors or 1099 employees? So Debbie, I'll kick it to you.
Yeah, for sure. I think that using a contractor is a great way to start out if you don't want to have them work directly for you and you don't want to have to manage them directly. That PEO option is a great way to manage that for small and mid-sized businesses. If you don't want to have people working for you directly, they manage that for you. You could also partner with other companies. We use a company called Magnet, which used to be called Pro Unlimited, and they would find a contractor for us. They outsource that. They do manage that all yourselves, and it's supplier paid, so that the actual vendor that's finding the resource is the one that covers that cost. So you can manage this a number of different ways. I think that's a great idea. Someone earlier asked about interns, if there's like an age limit to interns. I think to Joy's point, you want to make sure you understand the law in your state. I know in Connecticut, you can hire an intern to work at an insurance company. You can hire them to work at a number of different businesses, but you can't hire them in other businesses. So I think depending on like what they're actually doing for you, depends the age range that you can hire.
Yes, thank you for mentioning that. Joy, anything to add on contractors?
No, I think a lot of the times when people think of hiring, they think they have to hire full-time employees, and that's not always the case. I think one, you have to again just evaluate what it is that you need help with. How much time are you going to need from that person? Is it something that is just project based? Is it something that you need on an ongoing basis so that you can determine if you need an independent contractor, a part-time employee, or a full-time employee? Or like I said earlier, an intern is something that an intern can do. But again, just understanding the fine lines between independent contractors and employees in terms of ownership of time and responsibilities as well.
Yes, absolutely. Love that. Okay, we have one, I think we'll be able to get to this last question. And I just want to pause here because the sport doesn't stop here. I know you committed to this 1 hour webinar, and we really appreciate you because we know you're wearing a lot of hats, especially if you're looking into hiring your first or second employee. So we at AOF have support for you in the form of free business coaching. And Joy is one of our business coaches. She's an operational genius, but we have a whole community of coaches. So I'm going to drop that link. So if your question wasn't answered, it may just be because it's very specific and we want to make sure you get that customized information. So please go ahead and take a look at the link in the chat. You can schedule your free coaching session. Okay, so our final question that we'll get to today, I think is just such a relatable question. So thank you for sharing it. Someone says, I feel I've been stuck for so long between having too much work for one person to do, like doing everything myself, but not enough work to be able to hire someone. I'm feeling overwhelmed and burned out. What steps should I be taking now to finally be able to break through this next stage and move into that next stage of my business? So I'll go ahead and start with Joy, and then
This is a good question. It is a classic case of working in your business and not on your business. And so a lot of the times we are working in it and we can't work on it, which is really the business development side of things. And so it's a tough question, like you said, when you don't have enough work, but I think it's a matter of really managing your time so that you can focus on business development. And kind of going back to what I was saying earlier about the 3 Ds, figuring out what it is that you what is the priority? What do you need to get done now? And what is the thing that you need help with now that is going to help you generate revenue? So for example, if it's marketing so that you can close more sales, then maybe you need to get a social media intern to help you with that. But then it's also looking at what are you actually spending your time on during the day that is stopping you from getting more business. And they can be linked, the marketing piece can be linked to the business. Well, marketing is linked to the business development piece, but I think it also ties into you evaluating what are you spending your time on. And so reworking that. So hopefully that helps. I would have to know exactly what your business is to delve into that more with you in terms of some other marketing tactics that I can help you with, but can book a coaching session and we can go into that. But I would say it's definitely the working in your business and not working on your business, and really reevaluating the time so that you can allocate that properly.
Yeah.
Debbie, anything to add?
I would just say, don't be afraid to offer opportunities for somebody that's like 2 hours a day, 5 hours a week, so I think when I like listen to your comment and I feel your pain, it happens to all of us for all the different things we're responsible for. Just like being a mom takes a lot of my time and energy, and how do I get through what I need to do on a daily basis, and what is that risk versus reward when it comes to time spent, monetary allotment, and leveraging things like interns or contractors or a co-op where a lot of students are taking gap years, they're not going to college right away, they're willing to fill in, they want to do 5 hours a week of work. I just a friend of mine that I worked with like 15 years ago, she got laid off in November, and I needed to hire somebody to work with us. I need someone full-time now, but might not be forever. So she's opening up a charcuterie business, and she has space, but they're waiting to get some permits completed and whatnot. So the full-time job that I have might turn into a part-time job, which could augment her charcuterie business. And so, it's not like I was looking for someone to do that right away, but, through networking, you can find out that a lot of people are willing to fill cracks for you. And I guess that's the last point I want to make before we close this, is I put my LinkedIn out there, enjoyed it as well, but networking and keeping up relationships is so important. And offering help and asking for help is something that we all should feel comfortable with. People love helping other people, and people love being asked to help. Depending on what time they have available. So you might be surprised, maybe, your friends and family who are willing to pitch in to help you with some of those delegates that don't even want anything in return at all. They just want to see you be successful.
I love that. And I think it was fully worth going that extra minute. I'm normally pretty good on time, but that was so worth it. Thank you, Joy and Debbie, for spending time with us today. Yes, and thank you all for taking your time. We see some love in the chat, and we so appreciate it. You're going to get that survey right after. So if you have any comments or even any love for Joy and Debbie, please leave it there so we can see that and relay it on. We hope you feel more prepared to make your first hire, and we'll see you in the next one. Bye, everyone.
Bye.